Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. Dear Andrew Parker, head of MI5, dear Alex Younger, head of MI6, dear Dr. Bruno Kahl, head of the Bundesnachrichtendienst, BND, and dear Dr. Otto Lampe, German ambassador to Switzerland. I'm addressing all four of you now because I believe that all four of you have detailed knowledge of the mutilations that I experienced, the attacks against me. All of you know about the technology. All of you are in positions of power where you could, if you wanted to, stop the attacks against me. I have written to all of you and you've all refused to act. Therefore, I consider you to be guilty by association. I think what is being done here, and every day we're finding out more and more about the crimes committed against civilians, I think all four of you are therefore guilty of crimes against humanity. These are war crimes. The neuroexperimentation, the microwave assaults against citizens, these are wars. These are war crimes and crimes against humanity. And there were examples before of human experimentation, but this time the psychopathology, the ruthlessness, the persistence transcends everything we've ever seen since the Second World War, I should say. There were examples of how the Stasi behaved and how they treated people, innocent people in their prisons. And one of the themes that is common to all intelligence agencies and abuses committed by intelligence agencies is the sheer, unfathomable psychopathology run out of control. And this is what it is here again. I can assure you that the scientific side of the experiments will not be worth much. It is because it's not conducted under really controlled conditions. It's being conducted by corrupt people, and essentially it will be junk. It's essentially a mutilation system that you're building up. As far as I understand, and as far as Brian Tew is informing me, you're trying to map out brains, map out neural circuitry based on statistics of responses. You are irradiating, therefore, people's heads intensely with microwave radiation. What you're actually doing is degrading their brains. So you're actually degrading your test subject whilst you're doing an experiment, because you actually have to punch through the walls of a home to get at us. And you think that you can monitor what we're doing in our everyday life and build up statistics and try to mind control or brain control people to do as you please, but really what you end up doing is ending up with a big fat court case, charges against you personally for crimes against humanity, hopefully one day a court case in The Hague, and otherwise just junk science. This is the sad truth. We have seen now declassified projects from previous attempts, MK Ultra and all the many other projects in the US, what the Stasi did, what the Nazis did in Germany, and really, most of the time it turned out to be junk science, and that's exactly what it is now again. The science is not the emphasis here. The emphasis lies on giving psychopaths a way to live out their psychopathology and their sadism. What psychopaths desire the most is to mutilate people and to murder them. And one of the things that turns them on even more than mutilation and murder is to do it publicly. This is what it always ends up with. At some point, clandestine maiming and mutilation will not be enough. It will not satisfy the runaway need for power. So the ultimate aphrodisiac, as Henry Kissinger, I think, put it, is power. But for psychopaths, it's the power to take other people's lives, to denigrate them, to devalue them, to destroy them. But at some point, they will not be satisfied with doing that clandestinely. They will want to do it publicly. Another way of putting it is also what essentially investigative people, police officers and people in the military have found out about serial killers essentially. At some point, it's not enough for a serial killer, a proper clinical psychopath, to be brilliant at murdering. If no one knows about their brilliance, they have to go public. And in a sense, it's the ultimate orgasmic joy to be caught and reveal to the world just how many people they have murdered. And to me, it appears to be exactly the same here. So, Mr. Andrew Parker, Mr. Alex Younger, Dr. Bruno Kahl, your organizations are running clinical psychopaths. This I can say for certain. I think it can be shown with just using statistics and systems analysis, and I've tried to make it publicly accessible that the end state of any pyramid organization, especially a secret one, will be an accumulation of clinical psychopaths at the top. as the case may be, you still have a public duty. You are still government organizations, and you still have a public duty towards controlling your organizations. By the time you have reached a point whereby all you're actually doing is giving clinical psychopaths an opportunity to live out their sadism and their psychopathology, this cannot be called military intelligence anymore. It cannot be called a Nachrichtendienst anymore, because it has nothing to do with Nachrichten or information anymore. It is just sexual sadism. It is that simple. And I'm telling you, gentlemen, now for the umpteenth time, that now high-profile whistleblowers have come together. We have reached critical mass, and we're going through the data. And as someone, myself, I've analyzed very large data sets, and I, for one, managed to take quadrillions and quadrillions of events that the high-energy accelerators have produced and pick out 40, and from those 40 actually measure, the order of 40 roughly, measure a physical process with very high precision. And I'm telling you that the statistical analysis of large data sets will reveal everything, and it will be absolutely impossible to censor these people now with the internet. You can try to censor the internet, but you cannot shut it down. It will be revoked again, it will be activated again, so it is mathematically impossible to keep this information under lock and key. We are now in a phase where we are collecting all the evidence from the victims. We are going through all the public statements already on YouTube and Twitter are in themselves already enough to have a very good idea of what is going on. Furthermore, my own YouTube page has publicly now the statements of Brian Tew, the whistleblower, of what precisely is happening. He is accusing the intelligence agencies of neuroexperimentation. I can read out the comments, and I shall maybe in a moment. But what I want to make clear is that the fact that war crimes and crimes against humanity have been committed, are being committed, is now crystal clear. I also want to explain to the public what has happened to me since my last public appeal. I am now, every night I'm being shot in the head, mostly here on the forehead. The reason why that is very important is because essentially your prefrontal cortex has a lot of the higher functions. So what is being done to me is essentially degrading my brain ability. It's very clear, it became very clear throughout my targeting that what your psychopathic agents, so that's British and German intelligence and also Swiss intelligence, what they're trained to do is analyze a person and go for whatever is dearest to them. So in my case, you analyze quite well that my family and my friends are very dear to me, so you attack them in turn. You went for the women, you went for the weak ones, you caused accidents. In Britain, British intelligence has taken a very young mother of two very young children and essentially used remote muscle interference to turn her eyes into her eye socket almost as if she had fits, and to move her arm at the same time. It was done over an extended period, all the way to the point that she ended up with lesions in her brain where the microwave beam was burning her brain to set off these motions, as far as I can tell. Other things have happened. When I went public, a family member started essentially coughing up blood. Then when I walked into a German newspaper agency to report these crimes, he started vomiting blood and was hospitalized, pretty much live. So it's from just timing correlations, it's pretty clear what's happening. The mother of my best friend was almost struck by lightning on a clear day, in a fashion that can only be explained, in my view, with the technology sold by Applied Energetics, which is the laser-guided energy device that people can view online. It's essentially creating an ionization channel in air and then causing a high current discharge to flow through that, so that one ends up with essentially lightning that is steerable. So these things have happened now that I'm actually here, now that I'm also reporting about these crimes. My forehead keeps being shot at. It's very, very hard to concentrate. People are trying to shut down my higher functions. This is done with high intensity beams that essentially by now follow me around the house. As far as I can tell, there's learning algorithm, because over the months that I was being targeted and painfully shot at, I actually learned how the algorithm was getting better and better, and at some point the intensity stopped varying as I was going through my flat with varying thicknesses of walls and so on. So over months, this algorithm that was trained on me and my flat learned how to shoot at me with constant intensity and correct for the thickness of walls. I was essentially used as a human guinea pig. Now you're on to the ultimate stage, which is it's essentially neurological zersetzung, neurological disintegration, and it's pretty clear what you're doing. I can describe to people in detail what is happening. For those who are new, as a victim of the intelligence agencies, they mobilize their vast surveillance networks to harass you, to intimidate you, to cause you to have accidents, or just to hinder you during your everyday work, to frustrate you. On top of that, at some point they'll start irradiating you with microwave weapons. The only thing you have to know is that microwaves pass through normal building material as if it was milky glass, as if, you know, how light can pass through milky glass. Well, microwaves can pass through normal building materials. So this means that they can pass through the walls of a home without problem, so you can be shot at. Victims then noticed, myself included, that I started having my medical care infiltrated in Germany, demonstratively so, with little intimidation theatre. Then I was forced to have an MRI by a strange headache that was just on the back of my head. Now I realized that from an adjacent flat I've been intensely irradiated with a microwave beam. I just didn't know about these things at the time. I then was forced to visit a doctor who, of course, with a headache that lasts 2 weeks, sends you for an MRI. I was stalked to the MRI demonstratively, and as soon as I had the MRI and the contrast agent was injected, well, already on the day of the MRI, the headache disappeared. When I left the house to go and have the MRI, the headache was gone. That was very strange. And then after the MRI, I started having muscle twitches. But these muscle twitches were very strange. I mean, you might know that sometimes you've got maybe a little twitch in an eyelid. That's quite common. But these muscle twitches were rather systematic. So a major muscle would just essentially flex or pulse 5 or 6 times in a row, and then it would move on to another muscle on another side of part of the body. And zigzagging like that, up and down, one after the other, my muscles were individually pulsed. And I think now in retrospect I would say that in Germany, next to the BND, I was already put on this brain mapping program, and you systematically mapped out my muscles. Now you can already do remote steering of my muscles. For those who don't understand or don't know anything about it, as far as I understand, what's being done is that your head is being irradiated with microwaves. They essentially monitor the electric field, and then you can, send an electric pulse to twitch a muscle, and then see how the brain actually responds to that, and bit by bit map out how your brain signal is corresponding to muscle twitches. So then if you send the signal back, you force the brain, you create the same currents in the brain through an external electromagnetic field. You can then, I think, after a while also pulse muscles directly. This is how I understand it at the moment. I think there are ways to set off people's muscles, either by sending a high-intensity electromagnetic pulse, and then your muscles just react, because the pulse goes through your skin into your muscles, and the nerves essentially trigger and pick up the energy. So you can do that, but then also I think by now you can do more sophisticated stuff by mapping out people's brains, and then essentially a supercomputer calculates what sort of electromagnetic field you need to be irradiated with to create certain currents. And these are the experiments they are doing now. They essentially want to remote control people forevermore. Once you have your brain print read, this sort of decentralized system can force movements on you. I've also heard about people who say they had speech forced on them. They were forced to say certain things. And this entire architecture, it's essentially the old Nazi architecture. These are the old Nazi death camp experiments. We know that from Project Paperclip, the Nazi doctors and totally whacked out scientists were taken to America, and they continued. They infested America with these sort of horrific experiments. But also they shipped them back to other European countries. So I think when all these files will be declassified, we'll discover that all European countries have been taking part in these Nazi follow-on experiments. And certainly if one analyzes the actual publicly available data from the victims, they all seem to say the same, and it seems to match up one-to-one with this technology being tested. Now, in my case, after a year of muscle pulses, or half a year I should say, they started shooting at me painfully with microwave weapons. And that's, I think, according to Brian Tew, it's using trauma to really map out the neural pathways. What that meant in practice for me is that I have been now irradiated with cancer-inducing radiation, just because the BND thinks, oh, we really want to do this little experiment, and you know, it's kind of illegal and it's totally whacked out. So the way we do it is to do it just secretly. It's not really secret. If you speak German and you just Google BND and electromagnetische Folter, you will find oodles of information about people being literally tortured to death by the BND and by their miscellaneous, enablers. You can find that information as publicly available information about people fleeing the country. They have to flee the country to be safe, and they find safety in the mountains of Austria and things like that. So this is how utterly nuts and whacked out these people are publicly known to be. And this video, dear Andrew Parker, dear Alex Younger, dear Dr. Bruno Kahl, and dear Dr. Otto Lampe are essentially for you as a reminder of what's now publicly available. I don't think the victims can be freaked out. It doesn't really matter how many of us you mutilate or murder. Really, it's now public that you are guilty. No one else has got access to the technology. No one else has got access to the stalking networks. We all say the same stuff. And also the actual injuries of the victims are very, very specific and all go back to essentially this sort of microwave irradiation and microwave mapping. Now, I want to explain to you what happened the last couple of days. Since I had my last public appeal, no, they still haven't stopped, they just ramped it up. So I keep having repeated shots to the forehead. After a while you feel like you can't concentrate, but that's because essentially your prefrontal cortex, your higher functionings, are essentially degraded. You're being lobotomized. So now I'm in the phase where I'm being lobotomized. And you can read the public comments on my videos, go through, I encourage you, because I had now messages of an engineer saying, yes, they did that for me to me for 3 years, and after 3 years I couldn't work as an engineer anymore because this person was neurologically degraded. There are other people who say, yes, they did that to me at school. They announced that they're going to degrade me, and then they did degrade me. And all the other, tentacles, the secret societies that are, in my view, run by the intelligence agencies. I mean, they have to be run by the intelligence agencies because the intelligence agencies infiltrate absolutely everything. Human rights activists, so of course they're going to infiltrate these secret societies first. So that's essentially it, It's all now public, and but my concern is not to roll up the secret societies, which in my case is an open and shut case. It's essentially psychopaths trying to draw in stupid people, impressionable people, give them a sense of higher worth, and then use them for their own nefarious ends, which in the case of psychopaths always ends up to be maiming and murdering people, preferably, in their case, women and children, because that's how they can really live out their power. And that's what we see. So it seems to be the case now, dear heads of intelligence, that the public now knows that you're doing all this. I never wanted to investigate this. I'm just trying to make human systems better, but I was more, concerned with companies and starting companies myself, which you have demolished. Now, I have now turned around and I'm looking at you now and I'm saying, you are committing crimes against humanity and I'm asking you to stop. You have shot me in the head from an actual emitter, which I have filmed myself. I've put out an online video now called, I think it's called Hack Attack and Assaults Every 60 Seconds. And there linked is also the explanation of what's happened to me in detail. You are shooting into people's brains. The intelligence agencies, as far as I can tell, have got a program of neurological mutilation. It has now ramped up simply because the people, thanks to the internet, do not buy the bullshit that's printed in the newspapers anymore. We also know that most journalists are either controlled by the intelligence agencies or are actually intelligence agents themselves. I think I have it here. This was the book by Udolf Kotte, sorry, this is in German. It means bought journalists. And the subtitle is How Politicians, Secret Services and High Finance are Steering Germany's Mass Media. And Mr. Udolf Kotte is also available, so this is how you spell it, is also available you know, on English, so you can hear what he's saying. I think he's been interviewed quite prominently by RT and many other places. There's also a speech of his that I have now linked on my Twitter page. I think this is really valuable, and I think since then I have heard about the CNN anchor going public and saying, yes, we're being controlled by the intelligence agencies. Of course, because the intelligence agencies have for centuries, and certainly for the last couple of decades, been just control everything. But fortunately, this bullshit just doesn't fly anymore. I don't know a single person who actually reads the mass media. I don't know a single person, any generation, not just mine, who reads a daily newspaper. So that explains the nosedive, and I think that's a good thing, because most newspapers are essentially just the MI5 and BND newsletter, essentially. Do we need to buy that? I don't think so. So people are now coming forward. So, dear Andrew Parker, dear Dr. Bruno Kahl, I think this is now a new era. I now ask you to stop the repeated shots to my head. Yesterday I went into town, and I was shot at from cars, as I always am when I leave the house. I think the actual emitters are placed in cars at various places. Based on what I have seen, I would say that your microwave emitters are hidden inside the headrests, so that they don't irradiate the person who's sitting there, but are shooting outward. And I have been shot in the face and also on the in the head with those emitters. They are also shooting backwards through the headrests. And also, I think forward, you can hide. I have seen what I believe. I try to match it up. It's kind of hard to match up the pain, the pulse shots to your forehead or the back of your head with the position on the car. But based on, you know, trying to run this over and over and doing essentially pattern recognition, I seem to have spotted that certainly in Switzerland, those cars that I was shot at in the back of the head seem to have a very thick rear view mirror. So next to the driver you've got the mirror in the middle, but the mirror on the front seemed to be rather thick. So I think some microwave emitters must probably be hidden there so that they can shoot forward through the glass and shoot me in the back of my head. I think this is how it's done. Here around my home, one of the transmitters is placed on top of the, or actually I think on top and nearby and also the floor below, the actual black goat. So the day after my the assassination attempt, I survived. The black goat, ooh, Satanism, yeah, you know, this is where it comes in. Like, I don't believe in the Satanism bullcrap, but it seems to be something that's used by the intelligence agencies to bullshit dumb people, essentially, to give them a sense of higher worth. And oh yeah, it's Satanism. No, it's not. It's essentially psychopaths and the intelligence agencies bullshitting you. But for dumb people, that kind of gives them a sense of higher whatever. So I survived an assassination attempt here in Switzerland. I think that must have been organized by, you know, Mr. Alex Younger's team and together with Dr. Bruno Kahl's BND. I don't know who does it, probably just, you know, work sharing. Anyway, this was during my time at the High Court, so given that I received a death threat 3 days before, making references to did they kill Diana, given that I think it was MI6 accused of killing Diana, and then I'm in Switzerland 3 days later and survive an assassination attempt, I would say, you know, not knowing anything further, I would assume that's Mr. Alex Younger's team, you know, doing a mock assassination attempt. I also trust that your guys are good enough to actually kill me if they wanted to, but, you know, little mock assassination attempts, little black goats on rooftops, and then being irradiated from that, yeah. So this is the sort of bullshit that's happening. So in my case, I'm still being irradiated non-stop from that transmitter placed near or below the black goat, or I would also say it's actually inside the black goat. I've put a photograph online about the black goat. It can be seen on my website if you go to stop007.org. So anybody who's now watching, you go to court cases and evidence. I think that's the second row of links on the right, court cases and evidence. You can see a picture of the black goat, and to me, at that time, I was intensely shot in the head. I went outside, I think that's a picture taken in the summer, and I saw a flat thing, and that flat thing, to me, strikingly looks like an antenna like that. If I take off the handle here, this is just a handle, so that this is an antenna with which you can emit and measure microwaves of certain frequency. I think you cannot certainly hurt somebody. It's a very thin thing. This is now connected to an actual measuring device here. But if you put a little black box at the end from this manufacturer, so look at how thin this is, then you can emit radiation and you can point it at somebody and then hurt them. And the black goat seems to have a flat thing like that on top, which is pointing at me as far as I can tell. And certainly in that time I felt intense shots to my body from that direction. So to explain to everybody, that picture you're looking, or what you should be looking at, is this. And if you see something that thin, it is a flat antenna. Okay, so the antennas on here radiating that way. Okay, and if you point it at somebody, you can hurt them. So this is as far as I can tell. I was irradiated painfully yesterday leaving the house and driving about town here in Switzerland. Also, I parked my car in a place, and I was irradiated walking around town. I think the irradiators, these things you can put in a handbag quite easily, and then, you know, with a bit of snazzy intelligence agency softwares, you can set them off from a mobile phone, I think, remote steer them. I mean, you name it, you can do whatever you like with these things, but they are extremely painful. They essentially seed cancers. And then I went back to my parked car, and I essentially sat in the parked car because I was looking at something on my mobile phone for quite some time, and in that time period I was shot in the head non-stop. So really, you just suddenly feel intense burning on your skin and an intense headache, and that's because essentially the radiation punches through your skull and causes, essentially you just feel weird and you have this headache. So that is what's happening non-stop. But now they're using the fact that inside a car you're surrounded by glass, and microwaves go almost 100% through glass. So you can be irradiated and neurologically degraded through glass. So when you're driving your car, that's when they want to shoot at you, because when you're driving a car, you can't just duck and just go somewhere else. So they love that. They love doing that. And even when I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, they irradiated me. And that's also not enough. So eventually I just thought I'd ignore them. I've now received so much radiation. I thought, okay, 20 minutes more radiation, who cares? I'm really interested in what I'm reading, which, by the way, was actually a very good documentary. I should post a link about Pizzagate. So I was reading about high-profile clinical psychopaths essentially mutilating and murdering children. And that kind of rang a bell with me, so that's why I continued watching this documentary on my phone about Pizzagate. And anybody who doesn't know about Pizzagate, please go and investigate, and also keep in mind that Pizzagate is just a very, very small aspect, like Alex Jones of InfoWars said, of a much bigger structure. Pedophilia is underpinning our entire upper echelons of the so-called establishment, which I personally call the cartel. And that's because I think everybody who rises to a certain height, in the organizations, has to have a control file on them, I think kept by the intelligence agencies. So as far as I can tell, everybody in these very high places has to have something criminal on them to be controllable. And now that being a homosexual is nothing that you can blackmail somebody with, thank God so many homosexuals actually came out. That diffused an entire blackmailing operation here. So anybody who can come out, and say, yes, I'm gay, so what, really does a service to mankind that transcends them, simply because then other people who are maybe cannot come forward stop being scared about what if someone forces me to come forward. So this is all really good, but because being gay now is just normal, and no one's going to raise an eyebrow, certainly no one my generation, you need something else to blackmail people with, and I think the murder and maiming of children will always be something. By the way, also the maiming and murder of women. So I also think that whoever's maiming and murdering me is essentially what's being done. It's not even about the scientific, like brain mapping, which I'm sure even the heads of the intelligence agencies must know it's bullcrap. It's essentially just filming the people who arouse themselves with maiming me and then having a control file on them. I think that's where the real business plan lies here. I mean, there might be several business plans you gentlemen are running, but I think, as far as I can tell, those are, viable ones. But I ask you to cease and desist. I would like to continue my work. I would like to have the brain faculties that are still left to me to actually use to improve matters. This is all unraveling. You have seen now that there are several very good, very successful citizen investigations that are now coming forward. And bit by bit, at the moment, the police is still controlled. The police is still kept in check, but even the police is reading and watching YouTube, so even they will at some point understand. I have now informed the judges of the Supreme Court of the mutilation that's happening against me personally. I think by now it should be, you should just stop. You can try to take over my brain, you can try as a vindictive act to try to degrade me further because I even dare to speak about these things. But frankly, anything I said now or in any of the previous videos, the only reason I can talk about it, because this is not part of my investigation, is because it's all over YouTube. That's the only reason why I know it. So, I'm asking you now again to stop the microwave lobotomy, to stop shooting into my body in my home. I still have brain damage. Actually, for those who don't know, before Christmas, I was begging the German ambassador, Dr Otto Lampe, to please assist me because the Swiss police refuses to investigate this. I contacted the local police who refused to investigate. I contacted the cantonal criminal police, and they were ridiculous. I think they are part of the criminal cover-up, because once you're at the canton level, certainly criminal police, you must know about microwave weapons because now they're everywhere. So when someone comes forward and says, I'm being shot at with microwave weapons, and you're the head of a cantonal criminal police, and you just ignore it or think that this person is mad, you're either incompetent or totally corrupt. I don't think you can rise to that level being totally incompetent, which leaves just totally corrupt. So this is how I can tell that, with a certain amount of, high probability that the heads of the cantonal criminal police have been bought or corrupted one way or another. And in that case, my complaint or the actual Anzeige was passed back for investigation to the local police, and get this now. In the local police, it was passed to a woman who only works for the police 3 days per week. That's, of course, in Switzerland, how to investigate complex crimes with modern weapons. Yeah. And most tellingly, this person spent some time talking on the phone to my husband, who's never here when I'm attacked, who's totally underwater, totally traumatized, doesn't want to deal with the topic, doesn't want to know about it, and they thought he's the best person to give them evidence. I still have to hear back from these people. This was months ago, and they refused to even interview me. However, they did threaten to report me to mental health. I mean, the mental health card is so trite. Really, we have to start turning around, and we have to say, you know what, gentlemen, I think there's a statistical argument and one from systems analysis to be made about the fact that you gentlemen are most likely clinical psychopaths. So, and if it's not you, it's certainly a large fraction of the upper echelons of these intelligence behemoths. And really, it's not the victims who need mental health, care. It is really the agents working for the intelligence agencies who are doing these psychopathic, projects. So every single time you will accuse me of having mental health issues, I shall turn it around, and I endeavor to collect more and more evidence about the rampant psychopathology and serious psychological disturbance in the agent's head at MI5, MI6 and BND. And I shall start with MI5 and MI6. I shall point people again to those websites called MI5 and MI6 Exposed, which to me personally sound incredibly credible because they contain elements that I have now recognized as well. They talk about essentially satellite terrorism, irradiation, lobotomy with lasers and stuff like that, sex abuse, brutal injuries to agents, to traumatize them, to turn them into MK Ultra or Monarch or whatever these projects were called, controlled slaves. So really, I'm now saying again, Mr. Andrew Parker, please let's stop this. I do not want to get into a war with you. I do not want to investigate it any further. I think really your organization and Mr. Alex Younger, the same applies to you. I think the psychopathology needs to be brought under control. I think in the UK you have excellent mental health professionals who you can refer your agents to for therapy. Maybe you can bring them into MI5 and MI6 and have literally weekly counselling sessions so that you work through all the trauma, the MK Ultra victims that work for you and have been basically turned into victims by your organisation. So I really, really encourage you to have that. You know, I think also your organisation would really benefit from a reorg, you know, from a company pivot, so to speak, to maybe a saner world. I think your management structures are essentially defunct and just invite criminality. Maybe, you know, I mean, that's what I do professionally. Of course, if you actually pay me, then I am more than willing to help you. I think there's a lot that you can be done with the organization to get rid of this rampant criminality. Instead of just lobotomizing me with microwave weapons, you could maybe also make use of my skills. If you prefer not to use me, which I understand, there's, I'm sure, also excellent help you can get from the Boston Consulting Group and McKinsey. I think both of these organizations have extensive experience with working with highly corrupt organizations. So I think they can provide you with the necessary discretion that you might need. Dr. Bruno Kahl, well, with your organization, what can I say? I mean, you are the follow-on organization of the actual Gestapo, and you seem to have recruited the ex-Stasi agents, as far as I can tell. Well, I think you are in even greater trouble than the gentlemen at MI5 and MI6. I think you have to deal with a lot of the trauma and psychopathology, the encouraged psychopathology of the Gestapo, the old Nazi families, and essentially the Stasi. It's also quite worrying that, you know, the people who were in their impressionable 20s and 30s, if they were kept on, they're now in their 50s, you know, and if you hired any Stasi agents, then you hired the traumatized ones who were taught the Stasi skills, and now they're in your management level. So I think you really have a huge problem with them. But again, the same thing applies. I think also Germany has got excellent, not just mental health professionals, but also forensic investigators, you know. So you can just go through and try to eliminate the crimes of these people. I mean, as I'm speaking, I'm also now being shot at quite intensely from the direction of the Black Goat. So I can tell that you don't really like what I'm saying, but you know, sometimes when it can be very painful to face up to facts, but we're now in the 21st century, and I'm trying to tell you that these problems are not going to go away. They're just going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and the embarrassment will just become extensive. You know, it will become unsurmountable. So Dr. Bruno Kahl, I also encourage you to finally get on the case and actually deal with the psychopathology of your agents. Stop the attacks against me. There's not a fat lot to be gained apart from mutilating yet another woman, which I'm sure all of you would like to do out of just vindictiveness. But then again, vindictiveness is not very professional, is it? So here we are. Talking about embarrassment, Dr. Otto Lampe, it is rather embarrassing because everybody can read consular law. It says you have to assist German nationals, and you have to extend whatever, you know, help is required given the circumstances. And given that the circumstances in this country are that the police, the local police, the Staatsanwaltschaft, so the Attorney General's office, and as well as the criminal police, point blank refuse to investigate the crimes. I think you have to extend. This is the situation, so you have to respond to that, and then you have to extend the assistance. I also think that, you know, a small country like Switzerland with 8 million inhabitants, when there's a reason to believe that it's actually the BND assaulting somebody else, or together with MI6, you will find a small country with 8 million people rather reticent to go up against an organization that belongs to a country with 80 million people, who's working together with another organization of a country with over, I think, 65 million people or something like that. I might have gotten the numbers wrong slightly, but you know what I mean. So if you expect the Swiss to get engaged in an international case like that and kick up a stink about the German BND. I mean, you know that's not going to happen. This is where diplomacy would come in, given that most likely you yourself are a BND agent, or you have at least very, very good connections to the BND. Maybe you could please at last pick up the phone. I think, as I understand it, this is your last year as ambassador, and maybe you just plan to sneak out through the door before you deal with this case. However, it would just be such a really enough end to one's actual, posting, if it ends with the public mutilation of a woman who's begged you for help in front of your gates and you couldn't be bothered to even respond to the emergency phone. What happened to me over that weekend, and also the days when I was begging your embassy, I spoke to Ms. Richter, as I kept saying, Michael Kanzler, your Sicherheitsbeauftragte, the officer in charge of safety and security, already confirmed to me that yes, it's most likely these microwave weapons handled by the BND, and I completely agree. He has not caused any damage by saying that publicly, because it's true, Dr. Otto Lampe, the entire world knows. But I think, really, if you're that incapable of dealing with it or even admitting to the problem, then Mr. Michael Kanzler has done a better job than you, and he should be maybe the next German ambassador to Switzerland once you leave your post, I think, this year. However, I encourage you not to leave your post with this howling embarrassment that you could not be bothered to even admit a woman who's begging you for help. You could not be bothered to give her an appointment and meeting with Ms. Richter, even though she begged you now days ago, despite the fact that you have been sent letters, and the whistleblower sent them to me as well, by the way, so I know what you received. Certainly those letters I've read myself. You have been sent letters by two high-profile whistleblowers. High-profile, internationally known, high-profile whistleblowers, right? One of them is an NSA whistleblower, the other one is a military intelligence whistleblower, US military intelligence whistleblower. And these people have even sent me the letters that you've received. They have told you that what I'm saying is the truth and these things exist, and it's your job to actually help me and to please get on the case, amongst others. So you now have really, you must realize that people in the US, amongst others, do know about this. But there's also other people who have let me know that they've written to you. And these include also people from the UK and from other people. All of them. Very honest, high integrity people. So it looks now really bad, Dr. Otto Lampe. And if you think that this scandal will just be brushed under the carpet, if you think that just because the German embassy managed to, as they think, weather the Colonia Dignidad scandal, you're mistaken. The Colonia Dignidad case is only just breaking. It is only just breaking. I don't think you understand the internet. Given your age, that's not surprising. But information will not be lost. And this, whatever nonsense, whatever scandals there are, will be used as ammunition forevermore. And not just that, it will enter the actual publicly available information, and people who want ill of, against you, which doesn't include me, by the way, will pass this on, including to your family members. Do you understand? So this information will turn up, and just think about what would your family think about you when they know that women are being publicly mutilated. They have begged you for help as a German citizen in front of the gates of the Bern embassy. They have called your emergency mobile phone, which did not respond. They have talked to your Sicherheitsbeauftragte, who confirmed that this is a problem, who asked the person to come back on Monday. Monday you refused, right? I managed to talk to one person, and Tuesday you locked me out. And in these couple of days I was irradiated so hard to the right hemisphere of my brain that I've got permanent brain damage and therefore pins and needles in my left hand. Do you understand? The technology is clear now. The fact that you know is clear. All of the ambassadors know ever since the Moscow irradiation with microwave weapons. I think that was the US embassy. You must learn this as part of history. Surely. And you, if I remember correctly, you were also somehow involved with something to do with the Bundeswehr or military, something to do with military. I have to check Wikipedia again, but I think you were somewhere involved with actual military policy as well. So you must know about military microwave weapons. You must also know about the brain mapping experiments. But what you probably don't know about is network mathematics. And to cut it down, it is highly nonlinear, and it describes information flow. And now information flow is accelerating, and it's accelerating faster the more we actually progress in time. Do you understand? So now it might take people perhaps a week of finding out that you have let down a person. You have actually, in my view, contravened consular law by not helping a person who needed physical protection because she was being mutilated and maimed. You've refused any assistance for months, and then she was in front of your gates, and then when it was really bad, by the time I received brain damage, I was in front of your gate on that Tuesday before Christmas, and you refused entry. You refused. Miss Richter, I was told, had already left for Christmas. That's it. There's no help. A week before Christmas, you can't get any help from the embassy. That's that. No strategy of how to deal with this problem. I'm still being irradiated. I'm still being microwaved. Dr. Otto Lampe, these are not accidents. These are not one-off crimes. These are premeditated crimes with a shift service where young people are trained, just literally 25 meters from my flat, of how to irradiate others, as far as I can tell, of how to gang stalk. I have met these, degenerate little teenagers. Also, I keep waking up with bruises. I'm not sure if you can see this here. Can you see this? This bruise on my finger in the light level. So these bruises here, if I put my other hand next to it, you can see that the ring finger here is bruised up. Okay, and I can also show you it's nothing to do with my ring, because the bruise, as you can see, extends below the ring. The ring can't go that low, and that's the bruise. Okay, and most of the time when I'm just out and about, my ring is actually higher. It's, it's above. So this has nothing to do with the ring. I didn't hurt my finger because of the ring. But what did happen is that this morning, your agents amused themselves. They do amuse themselves with moving my hand to wake me up. So I'm woken up. Most of the time, either by very painful shots in the genitals. This is like being electroshocked in the genitals. As my neurologist informs me, there is no neurological disease that can mimic that. However, a bunch of sick bastards working for the BND and MI5 using microwave weapons can mimic exactly that. When it's combined with bruises, this time the bruises here on my ring finger, and yeah, this time you could think, oh, it's the ring causing the bruise, but I've got pictures which show my entire lower half with, I think, 12 bruises that I essentially received overnight. All of these bruises, if you look at the size, they're roughly the size of a euro coin. And what happened is that they wanted to flex this finger. So, it's, if you're sitting like that, they shoot through there, and shooting through, they can also flex your hand. So that's what you see is the entry point of the beam, right? And then what happened is that it just went like that, and sometimes my finger goes like that. So one finger is pulled. This feels very odd, if you wake up and your finger just keeps doing this is very disconcerting. And this is how I was woken up this morning. So they moved my hand like that. That woke me up already. You get to a semi-conscious state and you think, oh God, yeah, here we go again. This happened, by the way, every single time. And then they amused themselves with just triggering my finger. And here you can see, this is not done through brain interference. This is done by punching a very intense, essentially pulsed microwave beam through the walls of my bedroom into my finger. The walls of my bedroom stay intact. My finger gets bruised up. And why did I get bruised up? Just because a couple of wankers think it's funny. They think it's funny. Is this part of really, I think they should have maybe moved the other finger, I think. Why not? Why this one? But anyway, they think it's funny to wake you up like that. So this is now here, this bruise that you can see. I've got other bruises elsewhere on my body. from other incidents, and so on. So this is what keeps happening, you know, and I can, you know, post all the many different bruises, and I can explain in detail what I did that day. I've got my husband as, you know, as a witness to say, well, that day she just sat at her desk, and frankly, it's impossible to bruise yourself up quite so badly just sitting at a desk. I don't tend to bump into things. So anyway, this is what it is, Dr. Bruno Kahl and Dr. Otto Lampe and Mr. Alex Young and Andrew Parker. This is the sort of bullshit your agents do. It is now public, yeah? Do you understand? So maybe you could maybe have some sort of like, I don't know, you seem to have these like little teams that sit down and do like psychological analyses and like devise little storylines of what bullshit they want to pull off. What if, I know this is a totally novel idea, but what if you have like a team like that, maybe thinking about how to shut the crap down? Do you think that's possible? Like have literally like have a crack team. I'm keep being told that special branch is so amazing. They can pull off everything. I think most of the time it means pulling things down, like bridges and things like that and houses. But do you have any like specialists who can just, you know, shut bullshit down? You know, maybe the anti-bullshit squad, you know, like the super special branch or something. Can you find those people who could maybe like go to these, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4 locations around my flat where these transmitters are placed, and just take the transmitters away? Is that possible? You know, I mean, where's the article? Here. I think it was Sir John Scarlett himself, and I do trust the man when he talks about his own organization. So I'm referring to now to this. It's called Sir John Scarlett, MI6 has no room for mavericks. It appeared in the Telegraph on the 9th of May 2011. And as I understand, since 2011, over the last 6 years, MI6 just went from strength to strength, you know, got better and better. So anyway, here we are. According to Sir John Scarlett himself, MI6, SIS, is one of a very small number of intelligence services capable of doing an effective job, if necessary, almost anywhere in the world. I know it contains the word almost, but I think Switzerland, because it's just like, it's like a 1-hour flight, you can probably do an effective job in Switzerland as well, can't you? So you know where I live, because it's in my court papers, yeah? And you must know where I live. So can you just like send somebody to come here and just remove those 4 transmitters and stop shooting me in the head? Do you think that you can pull that off? I mean, apparently you can, I've even highlighted it, apparently you can do an effective job, you know. So please, would that be possible? Because you're now a flaming embarrassment. You're essentially public war criminals if you don't stop it, you know? And it's kind of like a really shit title to have in the 21st century. Because it kind of sticks. You know, like Tony Blair, I have never heard anybody refer to Tony Blair in any other way than a war criminal. And that kind of like really sucks, you know? Especially because there are now thousands and thousands of victims, and even if they just crowdfund and club together, there'll be one big heck of a court case, you know? And they just might wait until you're, you know, until you have enough enemies that people actually would want to have that court case against you. I don't know, lots of things can happen. But I really think that, you know how all the, like child sex abuse and so on, it kind of looked really bad. So now we really need to start investigating it and have these pedos shut down. You know, maybe we can also investigate the other stuff, which is not just the mutilation of children, but also the mutilation of women, and have that shut down. You know, do you think you can do that? So anyway, it's like a very, very long talk, but maybe I should highlight which bit is about the BND and which is about you. Anyway, so maybe amongst you 4, dear Mr. Andrew Parker, dear Mr. Alex Younger, dear Dr. Bruno Kahl, and dear Dr. Otto Lampe, amongst you 4 men, there's enough power to have the microwave transmitters within 100, or I would say even just 50-meter radius from my home removed. given that you placed them there, you should be able to remove them. And have my name taken off the list for irradiation from cars, you know, take my name off the surveillance and the disintegration list, you know. You could just go through databases and just like delete, like backspace, backspace, delete. And then, you know, you already wouldn't have this problem. You know, maybe that's possible. I'm not sure. I mean, it's now Friday. So by the time you get it, you know, it will already be lunchtime at the BND. So maybe everybody has left for the weekend. But, you know, in Britain, it might still be like, you know, 11:30 or something like that. So do you think you can get it done? Like make a couple of phone calls before you leave, you know, for the weekend? Do you think that's like possible? Because we all know that your agents are doing it and you're in charge of those agents. So maybe you could get it done, please, now for, I don't know, is this now the 4th appeal to you? Or the 5th, I can't remember. But anyway, please get it done. Thank you for listening.